Hey guys, welcome to the video for the 4.3 notes. We're going to start with a little warm-up. I want you to calculate the mean, median, and mode for these numbers right here. So to find the mean, you're going to add and then divide by the total number. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, so that would be divided by 6. So whatever the sum is, divided by 6. And then for the mode, there is no mode because there aren't any that repeat or that are multiples of. And median, you always put them in order. Okay, and so just based on where I'm at, the median will be adding these two numbers together and then dividing by 2. What is the symbol that represents mean? It can be showed with X with a line over it. That's the same thing that you'll see in your calculator. And what does the Greek letter sigma mean in math? So if I have this symbol, this means the sum. Okay? You'll see that a lot in formulas and things like that, just in regular math classes. So measures of dispersion, students will be able to use a list of numbers to find standard deviation. Standard deviation is probably one of the more complicated things that we have to learn in this class. So I'm going to also include a YouTube video on how to find this with a calculator because it makes it a little bit easier. If I was teaching this to you in person, then you would be doing this by hand. But there's quite a few steps, and so I'm going to show you how to do it on a calculator as well. Dispersion is our spread of data. There's two common measures of dispersion. They're the range and the standard deviation. Standard deviation is basically how much your scores vary from the mean or the average score. In general, a small standard deviation means that most of your values are close together. A large standard deviation means that your data includes a wide range of values. In some cases, a large standard deviation may mean that you have an outlier or an error in your data. So before I go on to the formula, you may have seen before something called a bell curve. Okay, if you haven't seen it before, you might want to look it up. But a standard bell curve has a couple of key pieces of information. This first line right here, this is your median of your data. And based on the standard deviations and what that looks like, so we were just talking about these guys, these dotted lines, your standard deviations. Just for clarifying, this is the median, but also sometimes it's the mean. It just depends on what you're looking for, but most commonly, let's stick with the mean as your middle right here. So what these dotted lines mean is how far apart your data is from the mean or the median and the average. So if I'm one standard deviation away, then that's going to be a certain percentage of my data is going to be between this line, my first standard deviation, and my mean. It's actually 34%. And this bell curve, if it's skewed, will then show that your data is skewed as well. So 68% of your data should be within one standard deviation of that mean. So that's quite a high number, high percentage that should be here. A standard bell curve is also how people do grades a lot. So that's one of those real world applications, how teachers can kind of determine if anyone says there's like a curve to their grades, that's kind of where it would be at. Okay, so small standard deviation means that your values are close together. Large standard deviation means that you have a large range of scores. So one of the most useful measures of dispersion is based on deviations from the mean. It is the average distance each observation is. So standard deviation is the square root of the sum of x minus the mean squared divided by n minus 1. So a couple key pieces here. This means sum. X is your data point you're looking at. X with a line over it is your mean. N is your total number of data points. Okay? Let's do an example. So I want you to calculate the standard deviation of each of these. The way I do it is I make a table. So on my table, we're going to pretend these are really super awesome straight lines. I list out my data points in order from least to greatest. 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. And then in the second column, I'm going to do data minus my mean. So I need to find the mean first. So using my calculator, I look up, I find 8 plus 5 plus 2 plus 1 plus 4 plus 7. I think we get 27, and we're dividing that by 6, which is 4.5. So our mean is 4.5, and then I subtract 1 minus 4.5. So I get negative 3.5, 2 minus 4.5, and, oh, not negative. Okay, so then my second step, so I took the X, my data, minus my mean. Okay, so that's what I just did, and I put in this third column. Then I have to square it. So now I'm going to square each of these numbers. So negative 3.5 squared. Ooh. So 3.5, I get 12.25. When you're dealing with a negative, make sure that you use parentheses here. I get 6.25, 0.25. Oh, what happened? Okay, so these are all squared. Okay, now the next step, it asks me to find my sum. The sum is where I'm going to add up all of these numbers together. So 12.25 plus 6.25 plus 0.25 plus 2.5 plus 6.25 plus 12.25. I get 37.5. Okay, so this is my sum. And then I'm dividing the sum by n minus 1. N is how many data points I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minus 1, which is 5. So 37 divided by 5 is 7.5. Last but not least, I know it's a lot, guys, bear with me. Last but not least, I'm going to take the square root of that number. So I take the square root of 7.5. And, hold on, sorry, my calculator's being wonky. I get 2.738 or 2.74, and that's my standard deviation for this data. Okay, so this is by hand. It's only 6 data points. Now imagine if you had 20 data points, right? So it could get to be quite a large process, but once you know the steps, it's not so bad. One thing we didn't talk about was the range, so I want to kind of go over that. So the range of this data, if I were to ask for that, your range is where you take the largest number minus the smallest number, and this right here would be your range of data. So I want you to do your homework, 3 through 12 all. You will have to find standard deviation. I'm going to request that you watch the standard deviation video on how to do it with a calculator so that you guys can be familiar, because doing it by hand, again, when you have 20 data points, will be a little crazy. And I want to make sure that you're not, spending hours on this. So thank you so much. Have a good day.